Hello, everyone. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all in the 14th seminar arranged by Saudi Aramco Cybersecurity Chair at Imam Abdulrahman bin Faisal University. The title for today's seminar is Modern Phishing Defense. And this talk will describe recent analysis on how phishing sites have changed over time, followed by a description of methods to quickly detect fake websites that impersonate a legitimate brand site. The talk will then describe methods to flood fake websites with fake credentials and identity information until the site can be taken down. I'm really excited to attend this talk, and it's really of my interest. My name is Professor Nasrullah, and I'll be moderating this session today. We divide this session into two parts. In the first part, speaker will present the main work, followed by a short Q&A session. Feel free to type your questions in the chat window, and I will try to read it out to the speaker in the Q&A session. Now, let me introduce our distinguished speaker for the seminar, Professor Salvatore Stolfo, who is a professor of computer science at Columbia University and Allure Security and Corporation. Professor Stolfo is regarded as creating the area of machine learning applied to intrusion detection and has created several anomaly detection algorithms. His work has addressed some of the hardest problems in securing computer systems. Of particular note is his interest in zero-day attacks and credential theft. Stolfo is also co-inventor of a novel technology that automatically injects intrusion detection functionality into arbitrarily special purpose embedded devices. Stolfo has been granted over 60 patents. Professor Stolfo received a BS in computational informatics science from Brooklyn College in 1975 and a PhD in computer science from University of New York in 1979. While at Columbia, Professor Stolfo has received close to $50 million in funding for research that has broadly focused on security, intrusion detection, anomaly detection, machine learning, parallel computing, and artificial intelligence. He has published or co-authored over 250 papers and has over 21,000 citations and with an index of 100 plus. With any further ado, now I'll invite Professor Stolfo to take it from here, please. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for the invitation, and I'm happy to answer questions during the presentation as well. Otherwise, I'll speak and happy to then have a conversation afterwards. Just to start, thank you for that nice introduction. I'm curious if you're aware what phishing is, and I am betting that you have probably been a victim of phishing. And if you never actually fell prey to a phishing email or phishing SMS message, if you open up the junk folder on your web browser email or your mail app, you'll see many attempts at reaching you with fake emails to trick you to visit a phishing site. It's a very big problem. And what I would like to talk to you about is, this is a quick agenda, is what's the state of phishing today and what the media reports. Defenses against phishing. I should say I should start with what phishing is. Phishing that the attackers do, how they do it. A significant amount of work was done in my lab looking at 5 years worth of data. Not a great deal of data, but enough data to get a sense for how phishing sites have changed over time and become more dangerous. And we'll report the results of that. And then how do we defend against phishing? And what mitigation strategies should one employ? And then I'm going to make some predictions about what future phishing is going to be like and what tools the attackers will use. So what is phishing? It's basically a cybercrime. It's a fake impersonation of some brand that communicates with you via email or by text messaging that will get a victim to visit a fake website that they create. And that fake website essentially is tricking you into providing information that they are stealing. It's a pervasive problem. It is growing, and it's not at all easy to deal with the latest generation of phishing attacks. In the United States, in most states, not all, it's a felony for somebody to conduct a phishing campaign against citizens. What phishers use this for, and phishing is activities from, individuals, organized crime, nation states, it's everybody and his brother. And that's because it's targeting human users who are the weakest link in any security architecture. And users can easily be tricked to provide secret information, and it's that secret information that the phishers are after. Typically, credentials to gain access to that user's accounts, whatever that may be, usually financial, that's the largest share of targeted activities. They use it to conduct fraud, and that's what's happening. Phishing sites are becoming more oriented towards stealing digital identity information to then create accounts, not only just access accounts. And it's very frustrating for customers who are victimized because they really have nowhere to turn when they have been a victim. And of course, the businesses whose brand websites were used for phishing campaigns, the accounts that are taken over, they lose quite a bit of money. On average, one campaign might cost them almost $6 million in breaches. There's a lot of statistics provided by lots of different analysts, and you can pick and choose from various sources all manner of information about the scope, scale of phishing. This is just a recent list of various statistics that have been published. The key is that there are now quite a few folks who have come together in this anti-phishing working group organization. It's a not-for-profit to track phishing and for people to exchange information. And they provide a quarterly report on the state of phishing. And this is their latest third quarter 2022 report. And as you see, it is, again, phishing keeps growing. It is the worst quarter that they've ever seen. It's a problem that's not going away. And so automated solutions to defend against phishing are really critical for modern business. The current technologies that are generally available are usually oriented to a corporate environment where the corporation owns the email flow. They're able to look at all emails coming and going inside the organization. They have, of course, web protection technologies as well. And it's really focused on protecting the company from employees being phished. The sad truth is, ordinary folks like you and I who are not embedded inside a protected commercial organization, just ordinary internet users don't have the same kinds of technologies available to protect them. And so it's unfortunately the case that phishing, which is an effective method for piercing the corporate security architecture, it is unfortunately big business. In fact, phishing and credential theft and account takeover and cybercrime and scamming and fraud, all of that is now larger worldwide than the international drug trade. It's big business. I see a chat question. Let me see if I can bring it up. Can you tell us some SE solutions? I'm going to be talking about solutions in just a moment. So modern phishing sites, they're really quite complex and they are protected by the attackers in various ways. These are just some simple statistics and some simple observations about what current state of phishing websites are. Probably the most interesting is that the phishers are defending their fake websites against security companies by cloaking. They want to access people. And so they use a number of techniques to test whether the visitor to their website is actually a human being. And if it is a human and not a security company or not some trolling automated technology, they then go after the user to trick them into providing information. So that's interesting that if a visitor to the site is not a human being, an ordinary user, they cloak it. They do a number of tricks to either not display the fake site or redirect the traffic to the real site. And then that way they are assured that they're only accessing real human users. Here we go. Sorry, we got stuck for a moment. One of the common approaches that has been used for years that's no longer adequate is domain monitoring. When a phishing site is created, a fake website, it's usually a clone or copy or near copy of a famous brand website. A domain name is created that looks close to the real domain name, and that helps trick people to thinking that they are actually looking at the real site. So monitoring the domain name has always been a focus for anti-phishing, for detecting phishing sites. But over time, the attackers, recognizing that their sites were getting detected too easily, have shifted their strategies. And so domain monitoring is no longer adequate. It's very small. Less than a third of fake websites are actually detectable from their domain name. So other sources of information are necessary in order to detect these sites. What's worse is that their sites don't have to be active for very long, because victims usually get tricked to provide their information very, very quickly. The optimal strategy is, if you detect a phishing site or a fake website that's impersonating somebody, take it down immediately. That way, you're reducing the chance that anyone will visit that site. But unfortunately, you have very little time in order to detect it and then to take it down. Victims already appear. And so those host providers that are deploying the website, they have to take down the site very quickly. They have to be informed, and they have to have methods that when a site is actually reported as a fake site, take it down as quickly as possible. The alternative is to communicate to the major browsers, like Safe Browsing at Google, and they will generally filter the URLs or filter those domains and not deploy it, not display it to the end browser. So either filtering by Safe Browsing or the hosting site taking down the website. Those are the two methods for taking sites down. There is a third, and that will be the subject of the last half of the conversation. You can become a phisher if you want. It's really quite simple. The strategy is you target a brand that you want to use. You create a website that you send to a large number of folks. Hopefully you'll net quite a few of those that are customers of that site. You make a copy of the website that you're impersonating. You re-implement it so that your back-end login page obviously is gathering data and throwing it into a database. And once you've set this process up, you can automate it, which they have, and there are toolkits that phishers utilize. They buy and sell them, and you can point and shoot at any website you wish, and essentially automate the whole process of creating a phishing campaign. Creating a spoof site, a copy of a website, is trivially easy. There are many tools like HTTrack to do it. The downside of using these methods, however, is that you're getting an exact copy of a real website, in which case detecting those sites as being impersonations and fake is really very easy. You just look for a complete exact copy. And so that's not a very good method for attackers to defend their site. So they'll modify the content to be not an exact match, but close enough to trick the user. And what they do is, as I said, is all automated. They pick a target, they register a domain with a name that seems similar to, or and there's very large number of trickery that they use to make the name look like it appears to be legitimate. They get a list of email addresses. You can buy them from the dark web and other sources, or you can scan the internet and look for email addresses. And then you send out a large number of phishing emails or SMS messages, or even voicemail messages. And those fake sites that customers visit by clicking on the URL, they log in with their legitimate credentials, and the fisher then has what they want. How do phishers get the emails in the first place? Well, you can crawl looking for text strings that have an @ sign in them. It's likely to be an email address. People on their websites put their email addresses, and even though there's various ways of hiding it, there's still ways of detecting what it is. There are sites that actually publish address lists. My university used to do that, but no longer, because they realized that it was just creating a headache. And also there's a large number of phishing sites that are not on the surface appearing to be very dangerous, because they're giving away free coupons. Click here, give us your email address, and we'll send you a coupon to your favorite retail store, free $10 off an Amazon purchase. And so lots of people, get suckered into that and giving up their email address. So it's not really very difficult to get targets. How do we defend against phishing? Well, as I said earlier, filtering emails and web traffic that has URLs pointing to fake sites is the key that you want to in order to reduce the number of potential victims being reached. But that doesn't always work, and it doesn't work for the larger population. Domain name monitoring has been used and overused for so many years now that it no longer is a valid technique, because there's lots of ways that the phishers get around that. But there are other ways of detecting phishing sites. For example, at a legitimate site, you can look for the referrer of a URL request to see if it's coming from a site that's a lookalike or a copy. And there's something called web beacons that I'll discuss in a bit more detail. This is something that I invented that is utilized now by quite a few companies. And the mitigation is taking down the site, as I said. That's the key. The faster, the better. And until that site is taken down, there is another mitigation strategy, and that's to use deception against the phisher. Security training is one of the primary ways of trying to teach people not to be victimized, but that's quite impossible, because the phishers are really very good at tricking people and making their messaging look real. And there's plenty of companies in the marketplace, some that have grown to more than $1 billion in market value, who have spent a lot of time trying to train people not to be victims of phishing. Doesn't work. Detecting domain names, well, there's lots of techniques that people have applied. One is to predict the names that the attackers will use by creating large numbers of lookalike domain names. This technology called DNS Twister will do that for you and generate a large number. And then if you search to see if any of these names have been registered, you know that those are going to be phishing sites. And so you can request that they be blocked or taken down. That no longer works. As I said, only less than 1/3 of these techniques actually work any longer. And to make matters more complicated, the phishers have learned how to break into other sites and embed their phishing sites in subdomains, in which case domain name monitoring is completely dead. And this picture is a website, a real website in Vietnam. I'm going to come back to it in a few slides to tell you how we actually found that this site was hosting a phishing site. The phishing site was a copy of a web page for, I think it was Bank of America. So Bank of America, a phishing website, was hosted by a small coffee shop in Vietnam. How do we detect that? Well, we'll see in a moment. What's important from all of the years of work, detecting whether any website is a fake is very hard. What I mean by that is, if you get any arbitrary website that you visit and apply a technique to test whether it's a real site or a fake site, it's near impossible to make that distinction. But however, if you are protecting a very specific site, if, for example, you're Bank of America, you could compute a model of what the Bank of America website looks like, how it's composed. That model you can use to test against a suspect that looks like or has elements of it that mentions Bank of America. And the Bank of America's specific model can be used with very high accuracy to determine that it's actually a phishing site. And that's the key. So you can't really build a general AI engine that's going to differentiate something that's real and fake. After all, everything on the internet is virtual. But you can if you are modeling a very specific site. And that's probably the most important takeaway in this line of work. And automation is critical because there are millions and millions of websites that get created. And you have to automate this whole process. So if you're protecting your own domain, you protect your own website and your own web presence and your own brand on the internet. You compute a model of what you're protecting and use that model as a means of detecting phishing sites that are impersonating your site. And then the responses are obviously to security personnel, alerts that somebody has stood up to get another fake site. You can also track the victims who have gone to the website. That's something I'm not going to talk about in any depth, but that has some value to determine who was the victim. Blacklisting on safe browsing sites like Safari and Chrome, that's standard. That's not trivially easy to do because they themselves have to be concerned about blocking real sites. So they will block sites only if they're receiving the information from a trusted third party that has a track record of accurately reporting. Then they will quickly put up filters to filter URLs to known fake websites until those sites are taken down, which is ultimately what you want to do. And then finally, decoys, which is an offensive method to flood the phishing site with bogus information until the site is taken down. And that makes the phisher hopefully go away. This is not intended for you to be able to see the minutia, the detail of it, but just the image itself is a characterization of all the various features that are used to detect modern phishing sites. It's not a trivial problem. It takes a lot of effort to extract these various features from websites and then compute a model using these features that gives very high accuracy in detecting a phishing site. There is one method, though, that is pretty straightforward and easy and has still not been disabled by the attacker community, and that's a beacon. And there, the idea is if my protected website, the real website here at unitedbank.com, for example, you place a beacon in the website. And so that if an attacker does make a copy of the website, the beacon goes along with that copy. And that beacon is essentially a GPS signal that when the fake website is put on the internet and it's accessed, when that site is rendered by a browser, the beacon sends a signal to a monitoring station that says what the source IP address of the site is that generated the beacon signal. And if that source IP address is not the legitimate real IP address of the real site, you know that a clone has been created. And so it's a very simple method, essentially putting a GPS tracker on the real website. And that tends to give you immediate feedback of when a fake website has been detected. And the early detection is essentially in seconds after the website has been rendered. And so you can, before any victims get there, identify the site, and immediately then work to take it down or to flood it. And the beacon is implemented in many different ways. This is one suggestive ways, but most modern websites have all kinds of tracking injected in them for ads and for Google ads, for example. And that tracking mechanism that's used in measuring website traffic, you can use it as a beacon. And so if you do try to take that out, the website won't function properly, and then therefore the beacon pretty much survives any attempts at removing it. I said earlier that attackers are hiding their websites under legitimate domains, and a beacon could ferret that out. So that's how we discovered this Vietnamese coffee shop was hosting a Bank of America website because a beacon had told us so. And now here it also highlights the difficulty of taking down. In this case, you can't expect the ISP that this company is using to take the site down because it's a legitimate business. So you have to contact somebody at the business and tell them you were compromised and somebody hid a fake phishing website in a subdirectory in your machine. But who do you contact? The barista? They're usually small companies, not sophisticated with no security personnel. They won't understand. So the best one can hope for here is safe browsing filtering would reduce traffic to this site. Question though, what are they really after now, the phishing and the phisher attackers? And what's happened over time is, stealing credentials is still of value to them to access a user's account. But what they're really going after now is digital identity information so they can create accounts. This is just a very quick view of what digital identity information we all have in one form or another. This is not a complete list, but it gives you a pretty strong sense that there's a lot of information associated with individuals, and that information is valuable to steal, and that information can be used to create accounts using the information from a real person. So we have seen in phishing websites requests for people to provide all of this plus some. And that means now we can look at the content of a phishing site and determine what is it really trying to steal and evaluate whether it's a significant danger. In this case, would be only trying to get contact information like your phone number and your email that would be used in a later campaign. High danger typically means it's going to gather information about you, your birth date, information essentially sufficient for you to change the password in an account or take over a password. We've seen for some reason websites, fake websites where they're gathering religion and ethnicity information and so forth. And of course, they ask for business phone numbers. But the extreme ones are PII, personally identifying information that is highly sensitive. US Social Security numbers, bank information is always on the top of the list. Logins to Bitcoin wallets and so forth. Biometric information, all of this that I'm listing here is what we have seen in real websites, fake phishing websites. So the information that's being gathered by these attackers is very, very significant. And that's why I label it extreme danger. We did a study, only about 135,000 phishing sites. This is just a quick view of the characteristics. And this is a very small sample. It's a biased sample. It's from sources that we were able to get it from. But we can't say that this is a good quality snapshot of the internet, phishing sites on the internet, broadly across the entire internet. So it's very limited in scope, but even so, it reveals quite amazing information. It does cover 5 years, so you can see what trends are occurring. And this is basically what we gleaned from that data. Extreme danger was increasing as of 2019. We don't have subsequent data afterwards from these same sources, so we really can't say anything further than what we know from 2019. There's a persistent low-level, gathering phone number and email addresses, but it's the significant and the high, the high and the extreme category where we're seeing an increase in the extreme PII. So phishing is no longer just stealing your credentials, it's really stealing your life. And there are trends in the kinds of information, and this is also what we were able to glean that the phishers are going after. So this trend analysis is useful because it is helpful in detecting a phishing site, because if you look at the login page, and if the login page for what you would think would be your bank, they don't ask you for your US Social Security number in order to log in. But if a site is asking for a Social Security number, you know it's a phishing site. And so the kinds of digital identity information that we listed in these charts, if you look at login pages and you see a number of these that are being asked for, including, for example, passport number, you know that you are looking at a phishing site. So they are useful for detection, but they were also useful in understanding the level of danger of the site. This is also what we gleaned from that 5-year database. The phishers have democratized phishing. It's in essentially every language. And Arabic is somewhere in the middle. But essentially, phishing sites come in worldwide, internationally, in every language possible. So this is not a specific problem for Europe or the US. This is a problem for everyone. Deception. So now, in the case where we are waiting for a site to be taken down, we could attack the attackers and use deception against them. The basic idea is digital identity information is just information, and you can generate it. And we do that all the time. And so if we create believable, personally identifiable information, and so when we visit a fake website, we can stuff it with decoy information. But you have to automate this and do this quickly, but you also have to make it appear as if it's a human user that is stuffing the site. You don't want to blast data too quickly. You want to make it look like you're actually typing at the pace of a human user, so that the phisher doesn't get tipped off that what was just entered into their site is fake information, because they'll immediately delete it. So you have to make it believable, and you have to make it pace as a human being. The question is, though, when they get this information, many folks have used this technique for years in different ways. And the attackers have learned to filter the data at their fake websites to only take what is considered by them to be the real data. So as I said, making your decoy stuffing, that's the really, really hard part. Make your decoy information look very realistic and survive the testing and the filtering that the attackers will do. Why do this? Well, there are a number of advantages. I just wanted to mention this as an aside, and then what the big finding is at the very end of this talk. But if you stuff highly believable decoy credentials, for example, you can track those decoy credentials if they're being misused. And that tracking could give you information about what's under the control of the phisher. To put it in the very simple terms, at a banking website, if I stuff a fake website with a decoy credential that allows you to log into the bank, if the bank sets up that account specifically as a decoy account, then when the phisher visits the bank's website, puts in the user's stolen credentials, the decoy, they log in to the bank they get access to the decoy account, what are they going to do? First and foremost is they're going to transfer the funds to an account that they control. And it's that transfer where they can identify a mule account. That is the account that's under the control of the phisher. And so banks can use this, and they have used this for their investigative purposes to identify other bank accounts under the control of perpetrators of crime. Decoy and honeypots generally, and honey tokens and honey documents and honey virtual machines and honey traffic. This is a technology that's been around since 1998. But the key to success of any of these is you really have to pay attention to the believability of the decoy in order for it to be utilized by attackers to your advantage, either to detect them, or you can use that to attack them by giving them information that might reveal them. So it's a non-trivial task to create this offensive capability against the phishers. Number one, you have to focus on fresh phishing sites. Those are ones that are active, because it would be a waste of resource if you're attacking a phishing website that has no use to the phisher. They've abandoned it. So you want to make sure that you're focused on an active website that's being actively used. You want to monitor the decoys so that you can identify information about the attacker. And you want to, of course, avoid detection by the phisher that they were tricked themselves. We did a very short-term but significant study joint with PayPal and the APWG people to do an experiment and see what, in modern times, what the phishers are doing with this decoy information. Because, as I said, it's been a technique used for a long time. So what are they doing today to identify decoy information? The first step, as I said, is got to generate highly believable information. It's non-trivial. It's more than just data that a human being would provide. There's also technical data that has to be generated, because the phishers and attackers today gather profile information about your browser, your machine operating system, your IP address. They use geolocation. They know that people are not going to be browsing at 3 o'clock in the morning, so they use time. All of these things that they use to try to identify that a real human user is looking at their fake website, you have to present yourself, your decoy information, in the same manner to make it seem like it's a real person. So it's non-trivial to just generate a fake name or a fake phone number. You have lots of information that you have to generate that's fake, believable, and passes the tests that the phishers do. And so after we built this technology just to create a limited experiment, we ran it for a relatively short period of time and just gathered as much data as we could just to see what's going on out there. And what we found in our simple experiment is that the phishing sites that we had identified, along with PayPal, they test their credentials immediately. They want to know immediately if they've been given a real credential. And they also implement means to bypass multi-factor authentication using a man-in-the-middle attack. And so they will assure that they have access now to high-quality credential that they can access at a site, in this case, PayPal. What we also found is what they did in nearly all cases, they were not trying to gather data that they would sell in the black market. They were gathering data that they could immediately use for financial gain. So this is what we saw them doing with fake decoy data that we stuffed into the website. We generated credit cards that actually work. And the fishers that gathered our decoy information made, these are three different people, three different fishers, three different purchases of significant value. They're not going after trying to buy a $30,000 piano, but something quick so that they can make quick money and buy, computers or buy tickets to a show or coupons for purchases and so forth. So it was quick, high-priced, easy retail purchases, and they used it immediately within moments after the data was stuffed at the phishing site. Something really interesting, another finding, we saw IP address traffic from these three retail shops in New York City. And we really would go, what's going on here? Why are we seeing the traffic about IP address and traffic on the use of these decoy credit cards that we created at these three local small businesses in New York City? And it turns out that's part of the verification process. This was a finding from my student Dennis, that apparently the point of sale terminals at these vendors was compromised, owned by the attackers, used to validate the authenticity of a credit card. So this was bad news. And this is probably pervasive, that there are lots of small businesses whose credit card machines have been compromised and are being used by attackers to test the legitimacy of data that they've stolen, the credit card information, the financial information. Bad news. In this case, it was also an issue for us. What do we do? Call these people up and say, your machine has been compromised? That's a very difficult thing because they wouldn't understand what we were talking about. But it is an important finding that the attacker community is very sophisticated. It's a business, and they have lots of resources that are unknown to the victims whose own infrastructure is being misused by them. So we also noted that the phishers were using lots of technology to filter, and so they blacklist all the VPN, known VPNs, because they know that if a VPN is being used, it's not a legitimate person. They want to see somebody coming over the Verizon network or Optimum Online or so forth. So they're very sophisticated today, and they use local geolocation information, local addresses of compromised machines that they own at local businesses to test the data. So that's quite amazing. To summarize the conclusion of this line of work, it's only going to get worse. Now, everyone has been hearing about and talking about ChatGPT and the huge value and benefit to society, and certainly that's the case, but it's also going to be a huge benefit to online cyber criminals. And phishing is just going to get worse. So you yourself may have seen email traffic trying to trick you, and the language may not have been what you would expect. The language might have had some errors in it, or punctuation may have been wrong, or misuse of, in case of English, and misuse of the word the, which in English is telltale sign that somebody doesn't know the language well enough. So these content-based detectors that the content of an email or any information, text information, so forth, is likely a trick. Well, you can clean it up. Use ChatGPT. What I have here on the side panel is I asked ChatGPT to generate a friendly email to a PayPal customer, telling them that their account was compromised and they need to change their password. And if you look at it, it looks like a very well written, it is. And its English is perfect. And this is how I could now automate the process of executing a phishing campaign by using ChatGPT to generate my emails. Further, you can use it to generate websites. So rather than having an exact copy, you can have something similar to it. So you can ask ChatGPT, rewrite the Bank of America website's content, and it will. And so you don't have the exact match, but you have something that is pretty similar to it and pretty hard to detect that it's not the Bank of America website. Furthermore, you can use DALL-E 2, which is OpenAI's image generator, same kind of technology that's used in ChatGPT, create logos. And so if you look at the blue one, that's a modern version of a PayPal logo. It's not the PayPal logo, but close enough. Most people are not going to remember what PayPal's logo is, but that's close enough to trick you. And certainly Coca-Cola, that is not Coca-Cola's logo. But again, an unsuspecting user will visit a site and think, well, that's Coca-Cola, it's legitimate. So you can expect the next generation of fake websites and impersonation websites. These advanced AI technologies are going to be awfully useful to the attacker community to generate their fake sites and fake information, fake emails. And so it's going to be very hard to detect them all unless you have sophisticated machine learning technologies, as I was describing earlier. Final words. One thing I have as an advantage, even though I'm a professor at Columbia, I have spent a good number of years trying to have an impact in the security world. It's great to publish papers and teach, but it's really more important to me to try to actually help people defend themselves against sophisticated attackers. So I've always been an entrepreneur, trying to leverage a technology from my laboratory and putting it to work in the marketplace. And so I created this company, Allure Security Technology, that is focused on defending brands from impersonations and defending against phishing. During all the years of selling and talking to customers and things of that nature, there's a few important findings, studies that have, and edicts that have come from it. Brand protection is a real concern of just about all companies. They don't want their brand tarnished in any way. And that's the key market force for companies to buy anti-phishing, not the fact that their customers are getting victimized. That, unfortunately, is not top of mind. It's not of their concern. It might change with discussions in the US Congress about regulations that may force companies to protect their customers. But they're more importantly worried about their customers being victimized because it will hurt their brand and their image. That they will pay to protect. They also don't care about identifying phishers. So trying to identify phishers through their misuse and mule accounts and all that, that's something for law enforcement, not for an average company. They just don't care. They only care about protecting their brand and stopping websites from mimicking them. And taking down the site is the #1 job. If you do it faster and better, then you're successful in the marketplace. So that's really important. And you can achieve that when you have relationships with the major browser brands and with the major ISPs and hosting and registration sites. And you can't develop that relationship unless you have trust. That trust comes with quality of your product and identifying real fake websites. And when you do that accurate enough, quickly enough, they then tend to trust you, and then they tend to respond to you. And that takes a long time to build. That's my final word about defending against anti-phishing. It is not trivially easy. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. But I see that the chat has.
Thank you very much, Professor. It was really interesting talk. It's hard for me to stop you here, but we have a limited time. So there is one question, I think, maybe let me type it again. Can you see the question?
Oh, yeah. So for Gmail, for example, they do look at links, but as I said, how do they know that a site is fake or not? And just willy-nilly trying to apply some general model is not accurate enough. That's why they don't filter. They would have to have a model of every real website. And that's just too complicated. And they have very many different services that they provide. One of them is not a brand protection service. That's where Allure Security, as its business model, has that. And so we provide the information to Gmail through safe browsing.
Right. The second question is about, okay. You can see the question, please go ahead with the answer.
Oh, yeah, can user awareness, well, user awareness means training, and training just doesn't work. You know, as hard as you try, people just continue to get faked out. And as I said, the phishers are getting better and better at generating content. It's really hard for people not to be tricked. IBM recently reported on a new generation of emails that are look and feel just like a real email. It was an attacker's phishing email, but from two fields were filled with names of email addresses that the target person had previous email exchanges with. So they're using user profiles and user email profiles. So awareness, everybody's aware that they can be scammed or tricked, but to be aware of a particular message as being a scam or a trick is not trivially easy, and many people just fall for it, even professionals. Two-factor authentication, well, there's plenty of ways, and there are online services from attackers that use a man-in-the-middle attack to bypass two-factor authentication. So it is not a guaranteed solution. It's good enough in most cases, but determined attackers, when they build the infrastructure, they get by two-factor authentication. There was a slide earlier in the talk that had a link to a report on how they do it. I know you had questions about Apple iOS and so forth. I had answers. I don't know how you want to handle that. You can put all of the answers in the chat, or you can send it to people if they wish. With respect to Apple iOS, their brand and their marketing is all about how Apple preserves the privacy and security, and so they invest heavily to make their software as secure as possible. They spend a lot of effort on searching, hunting, and removing vulnerabilities. So all the major companies, of course, have that desire to do so, but that is such a marketing focus for Apple that they're probably the heaviest investors in securing their software and creating secure software. Is it more secure than Android? Well, Android has had a number of problems, but it doesn't have the pervasive market penetration that Apple does. So it may not be as targeted. So you may not see as many attacks against Android, but it is attacked. And whether it's more secure or less secure, that's something that you just can't easily answer. Rose, is there a solution can be implemented to automatically detect phishing sites using AI? Well, yeah, that's what I was just talking about. If you're protecting a site from being impersonated, AI, machine learning is extremely accurate and useful. But the general problem of any randomly selected website on the internet to apply an AI model or machine learning model that decides whether it's a phishing site or not, that's near impossible. Especially when the site is a whole copy of a real website. The content is of absolutely no value. So then there's other infrastructure information and internet protocol information that you have to bring to bear to make that determination. and I had a slide showing a graphic with a full panoply of different kinds of features that you would use. How a website can continue functioning when a bug is discovered. Yeah, I answered that as well. That's really dependent upon the website and its importance and whose website it is, and how dangerous the vulnerability is. And so it's not a simple cookbook answer. It's something you have to look at in greater detail. Maybe it's just the website that is a Q&A site or a frequently asked questions site, so it's not critical, in which case taking it down, repairing it, and then reinstating it. You have all probably experienced from time to time visiting a site and you get a message saying this, come back soon, we're under, maintenance. And that's typically what that means, is that they're fixing the bug and they're maintaining the website, and then they're going to turn it back on as soon as they finish doing that. If it's a critical website, you're in trouble. So if it's a retail site and you've discovered a vulnerability, you have to make a business decision. How much business traffic do you want to lose while you're taking it down and fixing it? Again, this is a non-trivial question that you have to look at in detail. I have a question. When can find thousands of tools online? We can find thousands of research art about detecting phishing. How phishing is still alive? What could be reason behind it? And that's the market conditions. That's what I was trying to suggest at the end of my talk. You can't just have a general technology that's going to scan the whole internet and remove all the phishing sites. That won't work for the reasons I had just dictated. That means that companies that have websites that they want to protect, they have to choose to protect it and detect impersonations. That is doable. But then, they can try to do that themselves, but many companies don't have the technical sophistication because they're not in the business of, of IT. They may be a shoe company, may not have, a large number of technical people that work on their infrastructure and so forth. So a third-party provider like a Law Security, and there are others, you would purchase their product to protect you. And so it really has to be driven by the companies in the marketplace that want to protect their customers from phishing. And as I said, not everybody is really driven by that. What they're driven by is to protect their brand. And that is sufficient for companies to want to detect impersonations. I think, hello?
Yes, we can hear you, please.
All right. Oh, I have a question regarding using ChatGPT. Are there any current detection mechanisms that can detect phishing attempts built or created by ChatGPT? No, not yet. When the bad guys start using it, that will be a focus of attention. But I'm going to tell you a little secret. Now, when I've read a number of different reports, people playing with ChatGPT, use it yourself, and you'll notice something. It has perfect use of punctuation, perfect use of commas, semicolons. I don't know of anybody who's that good. So if you want to look at text to determine whether it's likely it was generated by OpenGPT, test it for its accuracy and use of punctuation. And it's a pretty good indicator that it's automated. But there's nothing formal that I can report about the accuracy of that feature. So, thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. I hope I haven't gone over too long.
Yes, thank you much. It was a really very productive session. We have 1 hour and the time is up. So now I'll request my dean to kindly thank the speaker and the participants. For this week, we will conclude the session. Thank you.
And thank you.
Thanks a lot, Professor Salvatore. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thanks a lot for the very interesting session and very important domain. I am Dr. Abdulrahman, the chair of Saudi Aramco Cybersecurity Chair. And on behalf of the team, I would like to thank you for sharing your knowledge and your expertise in this very important topic. I would like to thank also the audience for their engagement in this session. And thanks also Professor Nasr Mallah for the excellent moderation of this topic. I believe you open a lot of open questions and directions to tackle the issue of phishing. Still a very important topic, and still a lot of attacks happening to all major entities, all major domains, governments, big companies, and I believe also private sector. Yeah, I would like also to, we have a Bachelor of Cybersecurity and Digital Forensics. And we also have collaboration with other entities, and the major one, Saudi Aramco, and looking forward to see where we can take the direction of research in this domain, and looking forward to collaborate with you to put some important research to address, let's say, the phishing attack, at least in part of the, I know it's a big domain. You only focus on the phishing website, but there is other ways of phishing as well. So we may start with that one at least.
Yeah, you should look at Allure. As I said, that's one of the things I've done for many years, is try to push the technology out into actual use. And Allure is focused not only on websites, but also on social media, and looking at impersonations on all the various social media sites. The traffic for smishing using SMS, that's really under the domain and control of the major ISPs, and they're not motivated at this point. They do suggest a possible spam phone call. They're under duress from the US government to create these kinds of warnings. But getting access to that data is nearly impossible unless you yourself are the ISP. So difficult to actually.
Yeah, it will be very interesting to see how we can at least mitigate or control, let's say, the phishing through the social media. If everyone has been, let's say, copied through the social media to some extent, and this, I believe, very annoying, and this could, let's say, damage your digital identity, or let's say
your reputation.
Yes, yes. So looking forward to see also what effective ways to tackle such issue through social media or the website. We have done some research through the homoglyph attack. Some of the website be really identical, but they changed some of the Latin, let's say, alphabet. So and would like to see where we can also go forward in that direction. But for the meanwhile, I would like to thank you for very interesting talk and very interesting direction in this very important topic, and looking forward to collaborate with you in this research and hosting you also in other very important topics. So thanks a lot to Professor Salvatore. Thanks a lot for all the team and for the audience. And looking forward to see you for next session.
I'm totally delighted. Thank you for the invitation. Have a wonderful
pleasure, and great pleasure to have you, Professor.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.